My father is going to retire this year. He's turning 71. He earns a good living now. Here, he makes a nice amount of money. Not $400,000 or $500,000 or hedge fund manager salary, but he does nicely. But you know what? He worked for 50 freaking years. He has 2 master's degrees, nuclear and mechanical engineering. He's one of the smartest in his field. And you know what? After all that education and everything, most of his career, we were happy when I was a kid growing up, not complaining, but we were very careful with money. My mother stood home with the kids and then became, a part-time school teacher in a private school. So it was mainly my father's income, and it was adequate. But commensurate with his skill level and education, until the final 15 years, because he was in mechanical engineering, and manufacturing was destroyed in this country precisely when he started working in the early 70s, went downhill. I grew up never knowing of a time when he wasn't looking for a job. He was always being laid off and looking and looking. Last 15 years, he got into nuclear engineering again, and they needed him. There were very few people because they destroyed the nuclear industry, but that actually helped him, making waste containment vessels for nuclear waste. And finally, he made it. Finally. But like, even his base commute was, he never had a good commute. It was always on the Baltimore Beltway, 30, 35 minutes, but it could be a lot more. Every day, travel to India, China, Japan, travel, domestic. Always, to me, I'm traveling today. It takes everything out of me. I hate traveling. I'm half his age. But he did this throughout his 60s. Worked very hard. And then it's not like, I go on a 2-week business trip to India. No, it's like, boom, straight in the office, working, He worked very hard for it. Didn't go to prestigious colleges. His parents were dirt poor. Got his first job in Pittsburgh at Westinghouse. Had a little bit of food, a Chevy Nova, and $800. Well, I guess some people didn't have a car, so he did have a Chevy Nova, but you know what I mean? I don't want to hear this bull crap. My mother, her parents owned a jewelry store, didn't do very well. They lived in what would be considered nowadays a row house, and they knew a lot of people like that. But the one thing that is interesting is they were never violent. They never beat people up. No one made excuses for them. No one treated them as inferior, like, the soft bigotry of low expectations. This is what we expect from you. Yeah, it's not your fault. Go act like an animal. No, we are all individual human beings made in God's image. The color of one's skin is literally like the least important factor. But here, we are indulging blacks to the point that we're destroying them. You have a lot of immigrant groups that were products of the Great Wave from 1880 to 1920. Very poor. They built themselves up. And everyone talks about, the wealthy Jews run the world and everything. But whether it was Levi Strauss or Macy's and all the department stores, you think they just got it? They often came as like German Jewish immigrants, either in the 1850s, 1880s, 1890s from Eastern Europe. And they were peddlers. Sometimes they themselves wound up starting a business. Usually it was their children. And they worked up. The only people who are spoon-fed are the people who work in today's generation of big tech and everything else, the system. So they have the luxury of looking down upon blacks and working class whites. It's not a racial thing, actually. We all know that. So they project their own experience on everyone else. But I know very few people who do well that didn't work very hard, don't still work very hard, and didn't go through a period of time where they struggled. This white privilege is such crap. It's not even funny. It really is. And rather than some of these black leaders giving this message of hope and upward mobility to their, people in church and whatever in the communities, they instead sow hatred. That's where the anti-Semitic stuff comes from with the Farrakhan and Sharpton people, anti-Asian stuff. They resent them. Yeah, the Jews get all the money, they steal everything. Nope. This wealthy Jew thing is crap. Again, both my parents, Jewish, they came from what would be considered nowadays for sure poorer than anyone is. No one's poor nowadays because they throw so many programs and money at people. And that's what it is. It was hard work. The only way to suggest that there's somehow a problem is to say that blacks are inherently inferior. And that's really what they're insinuating. And it's disgusting. Because everyone knows it's not true, because there's plenty of blacks that do as well as anyone else does. So the fact that others don't is not because they're incapable of that, because of their stupid color of one's skin, which is so meaningless. It's ridiculous. It's time to address this head on. I'm sick of people running away from that garbage. Or running away from the truth. This really bothers me. This notion that, those of us that aren't black or whatever, colored people, whatever term they use nowadays, it's hard to know who's included in their, special chosen people. But again, they're actually not helping them. That's the tragedy. They're harming them. And they're harming everyone. They're harming society too.